Everyone has two lives. The second one starts when you realize you only have one.
A positive mindset is easy when things in our lives are easy. But when we realize we are facing the battle of our lives, for our lives, there is no greater test of faith, perseverance, and hope. And our guest today shares his personal journey over the past year, from discovering tumors to treatments to the incredible support of the dairy community and his team at Zoetis. And what you will hear today on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast is this story. This is the podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset, so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. At 39 years old, Jerome Meyer, area business manager in Wisconsin for Zoetis, was at the top of his game. He was leading his team as they helped dairy clients achieve their goals, an avid runner, and from the outside, every indication would say he was the pillar of health, until an unexpected cancer diagnosis last year. And while his health may have had its ups and downs, what remained steadfast was his positive mindset. In fact, this experience has connected Jerome to a faith he hadn't found before, an appreciation for his colleagues and the dairy community, and given him an even stronger purpose in how he lives every single day. It is with great honor and gratitude that Jerome has allowed us to share his journey with you today, right here on the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Zoetis. As the world's leading animal health company, Zoetis is dedicated to helping producers achieve healthy animals, healthy dairies, and healthy food through their world-class portfolio. For more information, visit dairywellness.com. Jerome, take a moment and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Peggy. Yeah, as you said, my name's Jerome Meyer. I grew up in the dairy industry, so I was born on a typical Wisconsin registered tie stall herd, and really been active in the dairy industry ever since then. As a little boy, followed my dad around the barn, milking cows, doing all those chores, feeding calves as a young age. Went on to UW-Madison, got a degree in dairy science, and been fortunate to have careers upon graduation in the dairy industry through the Holstein Association, Select Sires, and now at Zoetis, where I'm the area business manager, where I work with an awesome team of people, and we oversee sales and operations in the upper Midwest on the dairy side. So met my wife actually on a dairy judging trip when we were both in high school. We were the only two high schoolers with the other college students. Traveled down to Louisville, Kentucky. So we met there and then started dating while we were in college and have been together ever since, and actually just celebrated our 13th anniversary. So we live just outside of Madison in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin.
Well, congratulations on 13 years for you and Chrissy. And it's fun to have this conversation because Jerome, you and Chrissy and I were basically classmates, all of us in school at the same time at UW-Madison. And I've gotten to watch you in your career, as you said, starting out at Holstein and going over to Select Sires and being in management there, and then settling into the position that you're in now with the Zoetis team. And that's your role is managing people now, right?
Yeah, and I think probably 20 years ago when I graduated, that was probably the furthest thing that I ever thought I would probably be doing. And then for the last 10 plus years, that's kind of the role that I've been in. And I'm fortunate enough, I think part of it is because there are people in the dairy industry, but to be surrounded by exceptional people, great teams, whether it's been at Select Sires or here at Zoetis, some incredible people that are very passionate about their customers and the people that we get to work with day in and day out. I know we've got some colleagues that say, how blessed are we to be able to work with people that feed the world? And I think that's just succinctly a very great phrase to be able to say the opportunities that we get to do day in and day out.
And opportunities is what have unfolded in front of you over these years and with your position in Zoetis. And you've had many great things that have happened through that. But 1 year ago, Jerome, things really changed for you, didn't they?
They did. And so it's been right about 13 months ago. My wife and I, we traveled, had a vacation, and felt a little bit off or sick on the vacation. Just kind of chalked it up to a flu or a cold or something like that, and came home back to Wisconsin. And I've always been maybe a little stubborn on going to the doctor, and so it was a Monday, and I said, if I'm not better by Friday, I'll go in to either the doctor or urgent care and get checked out. Fortunately, I didn't get better. Went into the doctor on that Friday, and I described my symptoms, pain in my side and my chest, and At first they said, well, maybe you have kidney stones. They did a quick x-ray, and from there they said, well, good news, you don't have kidney stones, you have pneumonia, and here's your Z-Pack. But by the way, you've got 2 pretty large masses on your lungs. And started asking some other questions. Are you out of breath? Are you a smoker? Things like that. And I said no. And they said, well, let's just be safe and cautious. And they didn't have to do that, but they said, let's just schedule a follow-up visit. Kind of fast forward and crossed off after different tests. It wasn't this, wasn't that. So they decided to do a biopsy. And it was a Friday morning, went in for a biopsy. And really kind of quick process. They put you under. And before I left, woke up and they talked to my wife, Chrissy, and said, took a quick look at the cells under the microscope. We're obviously going to send it into the lab for further testing. And then, unfortunately, Monday, it was about mid-morning, I was getting ready to leave to visit with a customer. And technology's great sometimes. Got an alert on my phone that from UW Health, which is where we went to, that said, hey, you have some lab results available. And like most people, when they get a notification like that, quickly kind of clicked on it and said, well, what does this mean? Started reading through it, and the first thing that jumped out were maybe a lot of words I couldn't pronounce, but right away it said that test result was positive for non-small cell squamous carcinoma, which basically is lung cancer. So I read that, was a little bit surprised. Very surprised and shocked. And then my pulmonary doctor called about 10 minutes later and kind of started walking me through what and how to interpret all of those results.
Jerome, to just put a frame of reference around this point in time, like you said, about 13 months ago. So here you were, 39 at the time?
Yeah, so I was 39, had never smoked in my life. Maybe not as fit as some of the other people you've had on the podcast and yourself running marathons, but ran 4 to 5 times a week, 4 to 5 miles each day. So I felt relatively healthy and in pretty good shape, which was surprising to the doctors, and which is why when they initially started these tests that cancer was maybe 10th or 15th on the list of things that they thought it could be, because I had 0 symptoms. And that's where I kind of go back and talk about pneumonia was probably, for me, or has been, a really, really great thing, because I was a ticking time bomb walking around with these 2 pretty large tumors and just had almost 0 knowledge of it, 0 symptoms.
Here you were, 39 years old. As you said, a guy that goes out and runs a few miles several times a week. You were outside looking in, a healthy guy, and taking care of yourself, doing all the right things. And then, as you said, you have some things going on, pneumonia, and you go through these tests and go through the motions, rule out the things. But as you said, the thing at the bottom of the list was the thing that ended up being at the top of the list when you get these lab results on a Monday morning. So here we are Monday morning, and you see this on your chart on your phone. You get a call from your doctor, and you hear the word cancer. What was that like?
I've always kind of had the mentality of expect the best but prepare for the worst sometimes. So it's not like it was a complete shock that was a possibility and that it was going to happen, but it kind of was. To be honest, a little bit numb. This type of cancer, 90% of people that do get this type of cancer are usually in their 50s or over, 60s or over, and smoked. So that's where it's rare for about 10% of people that do get non-small squamous carcinoma to not have those precluding factors that would have potentially caused cancer. So to be honest, I was pretty numb when you get that call. Yeah. I just remember saying, I'm not going to be your doctor anymore, and we're going to have to refer you to an oncologist and a radiologist. And that was like, oh boy, this is all of a sudden stepped up a level as far as seriousness. Even after we hung up that phone and I had that kind of, are they sure? Like, how is this possible? Could they have switched the lab results with somebody else? We talk about that sometimes in the dairy industry. We breed the wrong cow to the wrong straw of semen, or we get milk samples switched around. I'm like, well, maybe they did that for me, and that's somebody else's results and not mine. So there was a little bit of that maybe doubt kind of that sunk in right away, or fear too at the same time.
So the fear, the doubt, and just that initial numbness of trying to process what you just heard in words that, like you said, you knew they were a possibility, but it seemed so far off based on what relevant data was pointing to, but that became your new reality. And so I'm kind of curious. So that morning, did you still go to your appointment or did you cancel it?
No, I did. And I guess I'm thankful I did. It gave me a little bit of distraction. I know where I went. I don't probably remember or recall the conversation that much. But then that evening we had dairy judging practice too for our kids as well. So myself, my wife Chrissy, and Cassie Endress, we coach our Dane County dairy judging team and have a great group of kids. And so we had dairy judging practice that evening too. And unfortunately both of them weren't there. So usually they're the great facilitators and leaders for that. And I had to lead the practice and probably kept it just to myself and our family of what happened, just because in that first few weeks there were so many more tests that had to get done and just maybe better understanding of what was going to happen, not just for myself, but then also how to explain it to others of what might be going on.
And at that point in time, how were you feeling physically every day?
Good. I went back and I looked at some notes, and I ran 4 miles the first day that I got treatments. And so I still was physically 100% normal for me. I had 0 symptoms. I would have never guessed that I had cancer. And I joke a little bit now that I think that's maybe why my pace slowed down. I kind of blamed it on getting a little bit older and not being able to run a mile or my pace quite as quickly. But now I can kind of point to say, well, boy, I had a big portion of my lungs were taken up by something else and not producing as much oxygen as they should have.
Oh, and here you thought it was just because you were pushing 40.
That's what I thought. And I said, hey, who are you trying to impress anymore? So there was nobody to push a 7-minute mile. So I was okay at 7.5 or 8 minutes.
So your life changed really fast.
I was blessed to have great doctors, or still have great doctors, and to be within 30-40 minutes of UW Health and where all my treatments were throughout this. And I think one thing maybe I took for granted before is, if you ask me what kind of doctor do you want, I would say give me the smartest doctor that there is. And I realized through this how much more important or more value I place on bedside manner and empathy, and for them to be able to relate and know the situation that you're in and talk you through that and give you kind of what is this expectation going to look like over the next few treatments, and what should you expect and how are you going to feel, and to explain it in a way that you and I and everybody else can understand, instead of trying to read some of these long words that we can't pronounce. And don't ever look at Dr. Google. That was a quick or early thing that we learned. Try not to look at the internet for medical advice. But no, it was a great support plan. They laid out for me very, very detailed of what to expect. Obviously put it all in best case scenario. And even when I kind of tried to deviate and said, okay, what if this doesn't work? What's next? They said, no, it's one step at a time. We're going to get through this, and then we'll take on that challenge once we get through this challenge. So I had a great medical support team and a great support team, not just medically, but all around me as far as other people, family, friends, co-workers from a support team as well.
So as that treatment plan and that care plan was laid out in front of you, what did it end up looking like over the months to come? What was your new normal?
So I was very fortunate that we caught it when it was in both of my lungs and my lymph node on my left lung. So then once we kind of had more information that they could develop a plan for, it was basically through most of the last summer, daily radiation treatments and chemotherapy then on every Friday for about 3 months on the radiation and 2 months on chemotherapy. And partly I asked or wanted for them to be as aggressive as possible, and also partly because of the stage and the size of these tumors, they had to be. And because I was in relatively good health, like you talked about, they could do both chemotherapy and radiation at the same time. So that's kind of the plan that we laid out. So started treatments right about now, or this time last year, and then carried on through just about through the end of July. And like I said, besides holidays and a few other days, every day I was driving into UW-Madison, doing a radiation treatment at 7:30 in the morning. And then fortunately I was able to get out the door by 8 o'clock and kind of carry on with the day as normal as you can. Being able to meet with people to really help maybe take my mind off of some of what was going on was very, very good for me. And then did chemotherapy on Fridays so that I could have the weekend to recover as much as possible, and then hit the ground running Monday or Tuesday morning. When I walked in that first day for chemotherapy, and boy, you see the people in the waiting room, and it's easy to feel sorry for yourself. Like you said, boy, you're 39 and you have cancer, and why me? It's natural for that to be in your mind. But boy, you look at that waiting room and you see all the people that they have it worse than I did. So I was fortunate, like I said, it kind of almost flips it on the head and saying, well, why at 39 to be upset about it? But no, that's something to be almost thankful for, that you're young enough and hopefully vigorous enough to be able to handle some of those challenges versus people. I think about my parents or grandparents that are in their 60s or 80s, how much more of a challenge that would be for them physically to try and undergo radiation and chemotherapy. And I know and they warned us, not everybody's body handles it the exact same. I was fortunate that mine was able to withstand quite a bit. And just during the treatments, minor side effects on what could have been the realm of possibilities.
So at a point in time where you could have really been feeling really down and even have gone down, some people go down a pretty dark path when they are in that situation too. You were able to actually look around yourself, Jerome, look around the waiting room and find some things to be grateful for. And that speaks volumes about the way that you looked at this whole situation and your mindset. Just elaborate on that a little bit, that mindset piece. Did you recognize in the beginning how critical that was going to be able to, like you said, be able to sit in the waiting room and flip the script in your own mind on where you were and what was going on? Like, did you realize that right away, how important this was going to be for you?
Yeah, I think after probably maybe 1 or 2 days of throwing maybe a pity party, that why me, and being upset that this is happening, I felt like I really didn't have a choice. And if I wanted to get through this and battle through it, there's really only one, for me at least, only one way to do that. And that was to try and be as positive as possible, to put faith in God and our doctors and everyone around me that this is going to work. The plan that they're going to lay out is going to be the right plan. So yeah, positivity was definitely kind of central to what I try to do, and be optimistic. And something that I always have tried to preach is that control what you can control. And I know that there's so many things in life that we can't control. We can't control the weather and the markets and anything else. But what we can control is how we face challenges and how we face opportunities as well. For me, I feel if you do that with a positive mindset and a lot of encouragement, chances are that you're going to get what you want to get. And I know that the quote that says, those that say they can or those that say they can't are always right. And I guess I've tried to live like that, is we can or I can accomplish something. And in this kind of aspect, I know I can't defeat cancer. I know that is a journey, or somebody else has laid that out for me, but I can know how I'm going to battle this and how I'm going to confront this day in and day out. So that is what I can control. So I can't control what God's plans are, but I can control how I'm going to face that. So for me, being positive, surrounding myself with people that were positive as well. And like I said, I have had an incredible support team, and I say team, but support family, friends, and everyone else around me. So that's been something I've been very blessed and fortunate to have.
Jerome, when you talk about staying positive and controlling what you can control and leaning on your faith and just building that mindset of resilience and to get through things, it's all easy when life is easy to do that. But it's not always easy when every single one of those things is in a position to be tested. And so that was the position that you were in. And so I know you mentioned your support system, but what did you do to really build upon that so that you could just stay so strongly connected to those beliefs and the mindset and your faith?
That's a great question. And not just through this journey through cancer, but it's helped me in my faith as well quite a bit. And I'll be honest that my wife and I, we went to church. When we lived in Viroqua, Wisconsin, we went to church every Sunday with her parents and her family. And we moved to Sun Prairie about 6 years ago. And when we moved, and then a few years afterwards here, we've had 2 daughters that were stillborn. And that challenged my faith. And I was angry. And I was mad. So then when I got this cancer diagnosis, I thought, boy, am I going to be angry again. And, I just so happened that the first Sunday, went to church, and the sermon is like they were talking right to me. And then the following week, it was the exact same, not the same sermon, but the same kind of, the principle. It seemed like they were talking right to me. And, there was the quote that I wrote down, I still have, is that it said, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and hope." And I said that I am at God's mercy on this, and I have to put my faith that He does have a plan, and that He wants to use me for good, not just for 39 years, but hopefully for 39 more years after that. So through that, really tried to focus a lot more on being intentional. And I've got some really great coworkers that have such strong faith and belief, and they talk about that, and they're inspiring to me as well. And so that helped me quite a bit to grow my faith here over the last 15 months, and I feel more comfortable talking about that, because it has been a little bit of a personal journey for me, facing some of those challenges, not just in the cancer, but also that Chrissy and I were challenged with previously. So like you said before, it would have been easy to kind of say, boy, these are all piling up. But obviously God must have a plan for us. And maybe some of that plan is if we have to endure a little bit of suffering to bring out some more positive on not just ourselves, but other people, then let's use that as much as we can.
You talked about a lot of things, hard things that happened before the cancer diagnosis and the treatments and everything that went with that, but really hard things that affected you and your wife and your faith. And yet in those moments, you could have decided not to hold strong in that area of your life, and you did the opposite. You doubled down, and you surrounded yourself with people who are already in your circle that could help you to do that. And some of the ones you mentioned were some of your teammates at Zoetis. What did their support look like for you?
It's hard to put into words how much, knowing that you have people that have your back and that it will do anything for you, whether you ask for it or not, is pretty incredible. So I don't take for granted 1 second how wonderful of a support system I have, and how flexible they've been throughout all of this too. I talked about I had daily radiation treatment, so that changes. I'm tied to Madison for 2 months, or basically the whole summer. So overnight trips or early morning visits, they were incredibly accommodating. Our customers were incredibly accommodating to be able to flex to that. So that really was very helpful. And then little things that the Zoetis team did, they know that maybe I'm a little bit on the frugal side in my personal life and love baseball. And they splurged and bought me tickets that I never would have spent on myself, about 4 rows behind the dugout to see a Brewers game. And that was an incredible experience to see that. And they were always checking in and thinking and asking, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And then not just them, but others that take the time to ask those questions. And they're not asking just to ask. And they're asking because they genuinely care about you and about how you are doing. So yeah, I still can't thank them appropriately enough.
So I know some of your team members, right? And they're some wonderful people and just full of life and full of faith and so wonderful voices and support to have around you. So there's the treatment time, and then there was the waiting period to truly know if the chemo, the radiation was successful.
There was kind of almost a little bit two spots, and for me, probably the longest wait, or what seemed like the longest wait, is when I was initially diagnosed with cancer and have to do the MRI and then the PET scan. And maybe that was just because the concern was so much higher of having to wait for those 10 days of results to see if the cancer was just in your lungs or if it was spread anywhere else. But then after the treatments ended, as far as chemotherapy and radiation, they wanted to wait about 2.5 to 3 months to do their first scan and to make sure to see is there progress that's going to be made. And then kind of for me, the second stage of treatments was going to be immunotherapy following that up. It was about 2 months after my last treatment where you really don't know what you just endured over the last 3 months. Did it work? Am I on the right path? I tried to distract myself as much as possible to not think about that. And it kind of goes back, like we talked about, to have that faith in God's plan that He hopefully is allowing it to work, and that this chemo and radiation and those treatments were effectively targeting those two tumors and shrinking them. I'm not a patient person, and so that was hard for me, and still not a patient person today, but hopefully a lot better than I was a year ago. At least with this type of cancer, the goal for them, because of how large those tumors were, initially I asked, hey, why don't we just take them out, right? Can you just go in and do surgery? And that wasn't an option because I would have lost so much of my lung capacity. So the goal is really to shrink these down into basically scar tissue and to have them. But then that kind of means that there's always going to be something there when they do a CAT scan or look at it. So that's been a little bit of the challenge to say, okay, now your first scan came back after 3 months and it did shrink. There's no new growth. And then so far every CAT scan since then on a 2-month interval has kind of said the same thing, that, hey, there's no new growth, but yet they can't definitively say that you're cured or it's gone, because it needs to be made and they need to monitor it for a longer period of time than say some other cancers where they can remove the tumor and then kind of definitively say after a few months that we don't see cancer cells or they look like they're gone. Whereas for me, it's going to be a little bit longer process to know 100% for sure, but everything is headed towards the right direction, because those first scans came back that I still have the drawing from my oncologist where he said great news, and he tried to draw fireworks, and I'm so thankful he's a better oncologist and he is an artist, because I don't think that's what they look like. So that was a long 2 months to wait for before I could then start kind of that second stage of treatments for immunotherapy after that.
So there was the waiting period, and then there was the fireworks.
Then, I had a little bit of setback. So that second round that we started in September, so it was called immunotherapy. We talk about chemo and radiation as kind of the traditional ways to attack cancer or fight cancer. Immunotherapy is designed to target areas of your body to help fight cancer or potentially new cancer cells that develop. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked as well for me, just based on some of the side effects I've had. It's been a week in the hospital, which is not fun, but luckily the side effects that I've had from some of those and from the treatments pale into comparison with the progress that we've been able to make on the two tumors.
So a lot. Testing and treatments, and then immunotherapy, and just going through all of these stages and events, and so where are you at now in this journey? So
I actually just had a scan here the 1st of May. Again, they've said, hey, there's no new growth. It looks like stable size as far as the two tumors. So right now, kind of everything's in they call it the surveillance mode. So here in August will be kind of the 1 year checkup. So then if we kind of are still in that surveillance mode, then we can start to push the checkups a little bit wider apart as far as the interval. Instead of having to do it every 2 months, then it becomes 4. And then potentially it'll be 6 months. And then hopefully the 5-year plan that they laid out is that you come in once a year and you get a CAT scan, and just to make sure that there's nothing new that comes back or that grows. So that's where they're at with that. I deal with a little bit of inflammation in my lungs from the treatments. So when I'm on the right medication, you wouldn't know. And I feel and act and can be incredibly normal. And when we try and change it to wean me off, you can tell my body can tell within a few days, and it's amazing how a little pill can prevent you from huffing and puffing walking up a flight of stairs versus 2 months ago I was able to run a mile on my birthday just to say I could. So I did that. When I turned 40, I said I'm going to do this. I know maybe an odd way to celebrate, but I just wanted to see if I could, and I won't tell you the time because it wasn't pretty, but at least I was able to do that on our treadmill here in February.
Well, that sounds like a huge victory. How did it feel to run that mile on your birthday, on your 40th birthday?
There are probably two parts: how did I feel during it and how did I feel after it. So the during part was, is this ever going to end? Why is this treadmill tick so slowly? And then 10 minutes afterwards, elated that, hey, I'm going to get back to where I was a year ago. And hopefully, maybe if I'm not physically as strong or as fast, hopefully the other parts of this journey personally have made me a better person through this.
And just you getting back on the treadmill and running a mile and putting that challenge upon yourself, I think it also speaks to the way that you tried to just maintain some consistent things in your life through the challenges over the past year. And one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier was coaching, dairy judging. I mean, the day you got your diagnosis, you showed up for those kids that you coach. And did you continue to do that throughout this whole time period too?
Yeah, through the early stages I did, and then kind of when treatment started at the end of May and the 1st of June, knowing that probably wasn't our contest actually fell on the day of a treatment, so it wasn't going to be at the contest. The last couple practices, Chrissy and Cassie led those two, but tried as much as I could through those first early months to, like you said, to try and be as consistent and to keep a normal lifestyle as much as possible.
Yeah, and was that helpful?
Yep, incredibly helpful. There was enough things that we had to scratch off the calendar last summer from activities and camping trips or weddings that we had to miss. So to be able to, at least Monday through Thursday and some of Friday, to be as normal as possible, was a healthy, for me, and I know everybody's a little bit different, it was a very healthy distraction to be able to say, I may have cancer, but at least I can contribute and be productive as much as can be expected.
And you kept giving back, and I think that also speaks to what you've alluded to earlier as well, and that was just remaining positive and finding things to be grateful for. And you were able to give back during a time when there was a lot being taken out of you physically, emotionally, mentally, all of the things. And so, Jerome, you also talked about earlier that you kind of had a moment in the solidifying of your faith that you knew that there was a purpose and could almost find an odd sense of peace in that during a really tough time in this journey, but that you knew that there was a purpose. And that if you were here for 39 years, you wanted to be here for 39 more years. And so now, at this point, where you sit right now, how do you view your purpose?
That's a great question. Early on, thinking through this and reading something, and our neighbor gave us some great devotional books, and I don't know if it's from there or where it was, but it said everyone has two lives. The second one starts when you realize you only have one. And for me, all of a sudden you face your own mortality and you realize, hey, this is my one life. What am I going to do with it? And I hope that in the next 39 years that a positive influence amongst others to help them, and in the roles that I've been in professionally and personally, help them achieve what they want to accomplish. And so I'm normally someone that maybe likes to be behind the scenes a little bit more, so that's a little odd to be sitting here in front of the camera and mic, but hopefully being a positive influence on others to really help them achieve their goals, whether it's professionally or personally. We talked about our kids on our dairy judging team, and I know the three of us, our coaches, the three coaches, we take such joy We started here about a month ago, and the incremental improvements that everybody has week to week. We've got a very young team, and a lot of them are in their first year giving reasons. And I know that can be a very daunting task for 14-year-old kids as their first year as dairy judging seniors. And so for me, that seeing that development and that change, I think that brings a lot of personal satisfaction, not just to myself, but also to Cassie and Chrissy, and knowing that we are helping them have more confidence down the road. And it's not just about dairy judging and giving oral reasons here in June at our Area Animal Science Taste Contest, but hopefully those are life skills that are going to help them stand in front of a group of people and give a talk, or to sit down and do a job interview eloquently and professionally enough. So I think that for the next 39 years, hopefully I can be a positive influence on others to help them achieve their goals.
And you already are. And that's what you're doing. And that's what you never stopped doing. And I've seen that in you, right? Like, I've seen that in you with your team and the people that you work with at Zoetis. I've seen that in the kids that you coach, just being a person that's not too far out of the circle here in our industry from where you sit. And do you think maybe you've just owned that role in a new way? Like, grabbed onto a higher level of ownership of what the gifts that you already had?
I hopefully think that I've come to a better understanding of what is maybe a clearer purpose and what I want to accomplish, and then trying to be more intentional about it. And that's something that I think through the last 12 or 13 months that I've really hopefully tried to improve upon myself internally, is that before, and still am, I've always very been task driven and goal orientated, and always wanting to, if we accomplish this, okay, what's next? And hopefully here I can be more intentional about celebrating some of the successes along the way in the journey. You had a post over the weekend. It's not just about sometimes the journey and a jar of tadpoles. It's about catching those tadpoles and what goes into it for your son. And I think that's just so true and powerful, that hopefully this helps kind of celebrate the process just as much as what the end results are.
So you being a goal-oriented person and an achiever, how have you redefined success and what winning is?
I don't know if you're familiar with strength finders or some of the others are, that you take these strength finders and they highlight your 5 strengths. And for me, it's competition, focus, achiever are right up there in the top 5. And empathy, unfortunately, is in my bottom 5. And it's good to really focus on your strengths and utilize them as best as you can, but also to be aware of maybe where some of your shortcomings are. So for me with empathy, I know I need to be a little bit more intentional about what I do and how I do that. And that's one of the things that through the last year, I've been guilty. My wife is so much better at this. Chrissy she'll send those little notes or thank you cards to people, and I've gotten them in the last year. And boy, they had a huge impact. And maybe I just didn't quite appreciate what they were or how they were positioned before. But when you on a random Wednesday open your mailbox when you get home and you see a thinking about you card from somebody in the dairy industry, and they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to spend the 50 cents on a stamp and a card and to take the time, but to know that they were is really powerful. And I know that the phrase kindness matters might be a little bit overused, but it really does. And you just never know the day or the challenge that people have. I've learned a lot about that over the last 12 months and hopefully can not forget about that here and continue to remind myself how some of those little things that we do can have such a large impact on others, and just be more intentional about that.
So intentionality is part of how you look at what you want to bring into the way you influence others as a result of how much you benefited from it yourself.
I'm not nearly as good as I need to be yet, and I'm not going to be the artistic one that can make cards or anything like that, like some others that I know, but whether it's just hopefully being able to send a success or not just celebrate, hey, you did a great job on giving reasons, but for our Dairy Journey kids, but you kind of really talk about how excited you are to see them week to week and what improvements they made, and really kind of highlight those for them as well.
As you talk about how much those little things, someone else's small effort was a big thing at the right time, and how you look to replicate that, whether it's the kids you coach or other people that you encounter in your daily life now. I just want to give you one more opportunity to say what you'd like to say to all of those people, your team members, the dairy community, the kids that you coach. Is there anything that you would like to say to them that you haven't had a chance to really say?
I would probably want to say for everybody that's helped me in this journey, obviously a huge thank you, and knowing that that's not enough, that those two words, I'll never be able to really illustrate how much that's meant to me, meant to Chrissy, especially this was something that she battled too. We often think that, and even me, I had maybe the luxury of being so focused on, here's my treatment, I go and get radiation, I'm going to get chemo on Friday, but she was with me every Friday. She sat there while I was hooked up to an IV for 6 hours, and she was there when I didn't feel well.
She's a pretty amazing woman.
So to all the people that supported her, that was huge too. Like we talked about, we can't control everything in our lives. We always think that there's got to be a plan in place, and I'm guilty of it. I try and map out. We just went on vacation. I mapped out pretty much everything that we wanted to do over the 4 or 5 days. But we aren't in control of so many things. And to have faith that there is a plan, God does have a plan for us, and that what we can control is how we face those challenges and opportunities, and facing those challenges and opportunities with hopefully a positive mindset, and really with a lot of deliberate intentions of being a positive mentality can help influence others.
And Jerome, just you taking the time to be willing to share what you and Chrissy, what you guys have been through, and the way that it's impacted you and the way that it's changed you. That right there, that's an example for so many others. And it just brings into perspective the reminders that I know I need to hear, and I think there's others too that we just need those little reminders and reality checks once in a while about what really matters, and not to pass up the opportunities to show gratitude, to dig into our faith, and to keep a strong and positive mindset through the easy times, so that when the tough times come around, and like you said, your quote,
everyone has two lives. The second one starts when you realize you only have one. And I think something that maybe I probably should want to add in is that sometimes I think that people have the tendency, when you battle this or you have challenges, you feel like you're alone and you're the only one facing this. And that's the thing about the dairy industry and the people that are in the dairy industry that is so unique. And I think unlike anything else is that there is so much support out there. And I think there's just genuine care, because I think everybody in this dairy industry is so connected. Whether you're a producer, whether you work at Zoetis, whether you work in an AI company, everybody has this genuine passion for each other. And I think that's something that's so unique, that we have an incredible support system for us. So,
Jerome, you're a pretty private guy. Like, this is not your normal. You said that. You being a guest on a podcast, you being in the spotlight versus behind the scenes, supporting others in their success. This is not your normal spot. What prompted you to be willing to talk about something private and personal that's been going on in your life?
You're right. In my professional life, I've always kind of been public roles, right? Kind of out front and center of of people, and whether it's giving talks or speeches. And so personally, always tried to be a little bit more private and maybe kept things a little closer to the vest on that. I think that one thing that when you talked or asked about this here a few weeks ago, at first I didn't know what to think, to be honest. I was like, well, why me? And I've heard a few other people have said that being able to try and be positive through this and work through daily in spite of getting treatments has helped them or inspired them. So if this can help anyone or inspire anyone, then I guess that it was worth kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone a little bit. So that would probably be the why behind saying yes instead of the natural. I don't really want to talk about myself.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm sure I am very grateful that you were willing to talk about this for all the reasons that you just said. And that's because your story is going to be someone else's survival guide. Like, you sharing what you've been through and just being willing to do that, it just may be that one thing that someone who's in a challenging time that they hear and that they're able to draw some hope and encouragement from. And that goes right back to that Bible verse you shared earlier. That sounds like it's become your compass for getting through this challenge and also how you want to face the future. And that's looking at the suffering as a way to build endurance and perseverance and hope. And the hope isn't just for your own personal hope. It's the hope that you're able to instill in people that will learn and gain and grow from what you've shared, but also be touched by the way that you have embraced at an even higher level the reason why you're here, and the reason that hopefully there's another 39 years and more.
Yeah, 39 maybe. Yeah, maybe I cut myself short a little bit on 39, but yeah, we'll do 39 plus.
Jerome, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being willing to do that. And it's the greatest honor I can have is to be trusted to do that with you.
Thank you for having me, Peggy. I know I enjoy not just today, but also listening to your podcast and all the other producers and industry people that you've had on over the last few years. I wrote down in a journal, and this goes back to, I went back before we started this and looked. It was right about a year ago you had Brett Barlis on, and he talked about his grandfather writing in a journal. And that was something I kind of started to try and do. I haven't kept up as well as I should when this whole process started. But Brett talked about how his grandpa wrote, "Today is a good day." And, your messages that you've had have been so, I think, not just for me, but I think so many other in the industry, very helpful to hear.
Thank you for sharing that. That means the world to me to hear that from you. And that confirms for me why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it's the thing that is of service to others and hopefully in a truly meaningful way. So you just heard from Jerome Meyer as he shared this extremely personal yet powerful story of how a cancer diagnosis reshaped how he looked at his own purpose every single day, helped him gain an even greater appreciation for his friends and team within the dairy community at Zoetis and beyond, and the power of a positive mindset and how that helped him get through these challenges over the past year. Thank you for listening to this very special episode brought to you by Zoetis. As the world's leading animal health company, Zoetis is dedicated to helping producers achieve healthy animals, healthy dairies, and healthy food through their world-class portfolio. For more information, visit dairywellness.com. And I'm Peggy Coffeen. Thank you for listening today. And hey, if you aren't already getting these episodes dropped in your inbox, head over to upleveldairy.com and join the Uplevel Dairy community. You'll get a notification right in your email every time a new episode drops of the Uplevel Dairy podcast.